Hi everyone, today I wanted to show you this off-roader. I call it the universal off-roader because it's designed to go over all kinds of terrains, so it's not just a trophy truck, it's not a buggy, it's not a rock crawler, it's kind of a mix of everything. And you may be asking, why am I showing you this when I have the Wildcat 6x6, which is, I don't know, the best off-roader you build? Well, two reasons. First, you guys asked me if there's a way to make a model that is lighter, smaller, uses less expensive electronics, but still has a good performance. And the answer is yes. And the other reason? Well, the other reason is this. Basically, when I was driving the Wildcat 6x6 at Brick in Bavaria, one of the rear wheels fell off. And I was like, okay, the wheel fell off, no big deal. But then when I took a closer look, it's not the wheel that fell off, the hub came apart. So the internal part of this hub simply slid out, it popped out, whatever you call it. So why did this happen? Well, I think there are two reasons. First, these hubs are all the way from 2019, so they are the original first edition whatever hubs. The second reason is basically the weight of the Wildcat. So wear and tear and the weight ended up in the hubs falling apart. So one way to reduce these two things, or actually all of these things, is to reduce the weight and to reduce the load on the hubs basically. So if I reduce the weight, I reduce the load, I reduce the wear and tear. So that's the second reason for this model. Now you can see here, this is the final version. Before I came to the final version, there were also two more versions. The first version, it only used two motors and it had the same 2-speed gearbox as the Wildcat. And in the A version, let's say the first version, I was driving the wheels directly without a differential. And that worked okay in the low gear, but in the high gear it simply didn't have enough performance. And I tried to put the normal differentials for the B version, the first version, and that still wasn't good enough to reach any high speed in the high gear. The motors were overheating and it was too much weight and not enough power. So there's always a balance, because if you make a light model, you still have a lower power rate to weight ratio than a big model, no matter what you do, because there are always some components that will have to be. There will always have to be wheels, there will always have to be a steering servo, there will always have to be suspension, no matter if you make it with one motor or 20 motors. And these are the fixed pieces, the fixed weight that you cannot remove from the equation. So the bigger and the heavier model it is, usually it has a better power to weight ratio. So I had to find the middle ground, and before going to the second version, there's just one thing I would like to mention about the first version that I did keep, and that's the front suspension. It is inspired by one of the actual Lego buggy cars from 2003, RC1. I'll put a picture here somewhere. Basically, the front is designed, it can also act like a free pendular axle. And I put this feature in the front and not in the rear, because usually when you're crawling, you want to keep the rear stable, because it usually has the most weight when you're going uphill. So this is the version that all three versions, this is the suspension that all three versions kept. And now let's talk about the second version. The second version, I have much more footage, which I will show you soon. It used four motors, 2-speed gearbox, and the same gear ratio as the Wildcat 6x6. The second version performs really good. there was really high performance. It did have the similar top speed as the Wildcat 6x6. It crawled, it did everything. So why am I showing you this third version then? What's the difference? Well, there is one major difference. If you look at the bottom of the second version, you will see that all the gears were exposed. And when you were crawling, all the dirt, everything got in there. And it really reduced the performance. Also, the second version was a bit wider and it had some structural issues in the front. It was not built as strong as it could be. So I went back and I did this, the third version. I changed the gearbox. So I'm using the new gear differential thingy, the red one, as a 28 tooth clutch gear, which is driving the 8th gear in the high gear, and in the low gear I'm using a 20 tooth clutch gear to 16, and then they're going to normal differentials and driving the planetary hubs. The whole bottom of the final version is all paneled up, so there is no way any rock, grass or anything can get in here and jam the gears. Another thing you might be asking, wait, you're using the small CV joints for driving all the four wheels on the inner side and the old weak differentials. Yes, but they are strong enough. As you can see here, the CV joints have yet to break, and I am using the 5.5 studded axles to keep them in place so they cannot fall out. Another thing I wanted to show you, the front suspension. You might be asking what are these free hanging 6-studded lift arms? Well, these are limiters and they were inspired by 8880 set. So basically they limit how much the suspension can move when it's bottomed out, in order to keep the link here from touching the hub too much, so it doesn't push it out. So yes, they are limiters. And finally, when talking about this model, there's also another thing you have to take in consideration is charging and turning on the BuWizz and everything. So this is also a thing I was looking into. So there are 3 red pins. One is here, one is here, and one is here. And when you push them out, ta-da! You can remove the, or let's say, tilt away the cabin, And now you can access the BuWizz bricks, so you can turn them on or off, and you can also charge them here. Oh, and on the final note, even though this model doesn't have the wow factor and the performance of the Wildcat 6x6, it's around 80% performance, and even though it lost the skid steering ability and it has the open differentials, I still think that it works just as good, if not even slightly better, to the covered gearbox as the Wildcat 6x6. And one thing is for sure, because it's lighter, there's gonna be much less wear and use of the parts, and that's why it is simply more robust, and that is the second part of the equation. So the bigger you do things, the more loaded the individual components are, the easier for something to fail, but you get a better performance. And the lower spectrum, you have a very light model, but it's not gonna be as fast. So I think this is a really good middle ground, and yes, it's a great model. I really like it, and if you also like it, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you very much, and thanks for watching this video and supporting me. Have a good day. Bye bye.